Hey Vinny, what is it about human beings that gives us the desire to represent our relationship to the world through images or material form? How is it that artworks can communicate something that cannot be said in words? And why does this communication sometimes confuse more than clarify? Strong opinions about what constitutes art and its value to society have existed since ancient times.
I don't know, you. How are we supposed to make sense of this painting?
Hey, wait a second. My paintings are seen as a breakthrough in modern art. There are lots of ways that art communicates meanings, but sometimes you must have an open mind and work at finding that meaning.
Okay, Jack, how does someone understand one of your paintings? It seems a bit hard to figure it out just by looking at it. Sometimes the message of a work of art is straightforward. Other times, art is harder to decipher. But even in artwork where the purpose seems clear, there are often layers of meaning that elude us unless we investigate beyond our first glance. How do we gain access to those layers of meaning?
You need an approach that will help investigate all the aspects that make meaning in a work of art. It requires some research and some analytical thinking, but I think we can help explain an effective way. Dr. Renee Sandel believes that investigating how the form, theme, and context interact in a work of art will help us discover its meaning. It's a helpful approach. Let's take a look at each of those elements separately, and then see how their interaction can help us decode the meaning in an artwork.
Most artwork takes some kind of physical form. Although some art known as conceptual art is meant to exist solely as an idea, there is usually something physical that leads us to that idea. There are elements that make up the physical form. Because things like line, color, texture, shape, and value are usually present in an artwork in some way, they have been called the formal elements in art classes since the mid-20th century. There are, of course, other things that make up the form of an artwork, like material, media, dimension, and process. These physical elements then need to be arranged in some way. This is called composition, and there are some principles for that too. This also includes things like style, technique, and skill.
For art to communicate, to touch us in some way, it must engage with an aspect of human experience. That experience can be dramatic or profound, addressing important issues of history, society, or culture. Sometimes it can be intimate or private, expressing emotions or observations that are more personal. What the artwork is trying to communicate can be said to be its big idea. It's important to understand that the big idea and the subject matter of an artwork are two different things. In a nutshell, the subject matter is the vehicle that the artist uses to carry the artist's theme. The objects in this still life painting are the subject matter, but they are all symbols that carry a larger meaning about life.
Artists don't exist in a vacuum. They are a product of their times who are influenced by ideas, history, politics, and cultural norms. Their human experience is what they make art about. To fully understand a work of art, we need to get some of the backstory. Who made the artwork? When and where was it made? And perhaps most importantly, why was it made? Now that we have defined form, theme, and context, let's look at how their interaction can lead us to a better understanding of an artwork. We'll use as examples two artworks that could not look more different from each other.
The end of the 18th century was a tumultuous time for France. A growing population, widespread unemployment, and social inequality presented many problems. Spurred on by the ideals of the Enlightenment, equality, citizenship, and inalienable rights, the people of France ousted the king and transformed their society from a monarchy to a republic. Although the political atmosphere surrounding the revolution was complex, the official revolution began in 1789, and a republic was proclaimed in 1792. Jacques-Louis David was a well-known artist and a supporter of the revolution. In 1787, David exhibited his painting, The Death of Socrates. The subject matter of David's painting, the story of Socrates' death, is from Plato's Phaedo. David depicts Socrates, a Greek philosopher whose ideas got him on the wrong side of the Athenian government, and he was given the choice to commit suicide or be banished from Athens. The subject of the painting is the moment when Socrates chose to drink hemlock rather than denounce his values. Obviously, David is technically very skilled, but let's see if there is more to the painting than that. Using our criteria, let's see if we can piece together why this is an important and controversial painting. The story of Socrates' death implies that the ideals of democracy and truth should be the guiding principles of man. This is the big idea of the painting, and thus the painting was seen by supporters of the revolution as a symbol for their cause. Recalling the criteria for examining an artwork's form, it is easy to see how David manipulates the aspects of two-dimensional composition to create visual drama in this painting. His use of light and color draws to the main character Socrates. The rendering of the figures clearly shows the emotion of the moment. His skill in using oil paint to create a window on this scene for us is unsurpassed. Clearly, David is a master at manipulating the formal elements and the principles of design in this painting. As a young man, David had studied in Rome. Influenced by the classical art of ancient Rome, his style became known as Neoclassicism. This nod to the ideals of the classical period gives the painting further gravitas. Understanding how the theme of the painting relates to the events of the time allows us to see that the meaning of this painting goes beyond a well-painted scene from Greek history.
Dutch artist Piet Mondrian's painting, composition with red, yellow, blue, and black, looks nothing like David's painting. There is no narrative to follow like the story of Socrates' death. How then can this painting carry meaning? Let's use our form, theme, and context criteria to investigate. We need to think about the time when this painting was made to realize how radical it was. Throughout the 19th century and into the 20th century, factors such as the Industrial Revolution, new scientific discoveries, and political upheavals around the world made people question the legitimacy of old ideas. Artists wanted to create something new and modern to go along with the changing times. As a reaction to the traditional and accepted representation in art, abstraction as a style was beginning to develop. A form of art labeled Cubism by art critics was having a wide influence in Europe. Mondrian's painting takes the abstract form to an extreme. Mondrian's painting also manipulates the formal elements and principles of design, but to different ends from David. Clearly, he has no interest in representing reality in a traditional sense. Mondrian is trying to use the elements of color, balance, unity, and variety to evoke meaning using abstraction. But what meaning can these elements, arranged in this simple manner, convey? During Mondrian's time, a new philosophical movement known as Theosophy was taking hold in Europe. While Theosophy is complex, basically Theosophists believe that there is a divine absolute, and that knowledge of this absolute has been lost. However, this knowledge is possible to regain by using certain esoteric practices. Theosophy mixes both Western and Eastern religious and philosophical ideas. Mondrian became interested in these ideas and began to try to communicate their essence through his painting. Mondrian had said, "Art is higher than reality and has no direct relation to reality. To approach the spiritual in art, one will make as little use as possible of reality, because reality is opposed to the spiritual." World War I began in 1914, and its widespread destruction perhaps signaled to Mondrian that a return to the spiritual was needed now more than ever. Mondrian set up a rigid set of parameters for his painting. He decided that to arrive at a pure art with no relation to reality, he would only use primary colors, black, white, and gray, and only horizontal and vertical lines. Within those strict parameters, he thought he could represent a spiritual harmony and order. So if spiritual harmony and order is Mondrian's big idea, we might say that his subject matter is color and line. We can debate whether Mondrian achieved his goal, but his use of abstraction in art to represent abstract ideas would become the epitome of the modern approach to painting. Mondrian and David both use painting to communicate. While David's style may be more familiar to us, by exploring form, theme, and context, we can see that both these paintings carry meaning.
Of course, painting is only one form of art making. Other forms, like sculpture, installation art, video, photography, or performance art, have their own forms and themes, and are all made within a context. Sometimes talking about line, shape, and color can mislead us when looking for the meaning in a work of art. we may need to expand our notion of form when analyzing an artwork. In 1970, artist John Baldessari and 5 of his friends burned all of their paintings in a performative artwork called the Cremation Project. The ashes were baked into cookies and placed in an urn. Through this action, he wanted to connect artistic practice to the human life cycle, as well as free the ideas behind his art from the art object. The form of the work was in the action and in the results. A commemorative plaque was made, and an urn to keep the ashes, but to talk about the color or shape of these elements doesn't really help us to get to the essential meaning of the work.
Art is all around us. Sometimes it touches us deeply, and sometimes it fails to communicate anything relevant to our lives. But if we look carefully at the form, ascertain the theme, and learn something about the context of an artwork, perhaps we will be rewarded by finding new and relevant meaning that does enrich our lives.